as I have often said, don't mess with Texas or Florida for that matter. Wow, they are pretty upset, understandably so. We're going to get into all of it about the repeal of what's called Title 42, which very well will result in a massive migration of migrants to the southern border. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Trish Regan Show. I am Trish. A quick reminder that portions of today's show are brought to you by none other than Legacy Precious Metals. There has never been a better time to invest in precious metals, specifically gold, than right now. So go to legacypminvestments.com, legacypminvestments.com for more. Wow, Texas and Florida are pretty understandably upset. Basically, let me tell you what's going on. So there's this thing that Donald Trump's administration put into place back in March of 2020 during the height of coronavirus called Title 42. It's something that the federal government has on its books that it hasn't often used, but it goes all the way back to 1944, and it's enabling the federal government to, quote, have the power to prohibit in whole or in part the introduction of persons and properties from certain countries during a public health crisis if there is, quote, a serious danger of the introduction of such disease into the United States. And so, of course, the Trump administration put this into place in March 2020 because they were trying to stop the spread of COVID. But now that's going away because the CDC has decided, you know what, COVID's not quite the problem that it once was. And so now people can apply for asylum, and that whole process can happen right here on this side of the border. And so in anticipation of this, our Border Patrol is getting very nervous. The expectation is that you're going to have at least 8,000 people apprehended per day. That number could swell to 15,000. And the expectation is that you're going to see a border crisis unlike anything you've ever seen before. You know, we were already pre-COVID dealing with massive numbers, and now in this environment, even with Title 42 there on the books still, we've been looking at nearly 1 million migrants that have come in over the last 5.5 months. It's the fiscal year beginning in October for the Border Patrol. So we're going to have a problem. I mean, the expectation is this is going to be at least twice as bad, and you can understand why states like Texas and Florida are concerned. Right? Because they have to shoulder the economic burden of all this, the social burden of all of this. And there seems to be no real concern or care from Washington, D.C. So Greg Abbott, the governor of Texas, he's got an answer. You know what he's doing? He said, quote, to help local officials whose communities are being overwhelmed by the hordes of illegal immigrants who are being dropped off by the administration, Texas is providing charter buses to send these illegal immigrants who have been dropped off by the Biden administration to Washington, D.C. So he's going to ship them all there, or some of them anyway, so that Biden and lawmakers there in D.C. can get effectively a taste of their own medicine. Now, Democrats criticize this, and they say this is nothing but a stunt. This is a political stunt. In fact, Cory Booker was pretty vocal about all of that, Senator Booker from New Jersey, saying that this is a stunt. And you know what? If Texas really wanted to solve the problem, it would come up with some more creative solutions. The problem, fundamentally, however, is that this is a Texas issue, I think, as Washington, D.C. sees it. This is a Florida issue. This is an Arizona issue. This is not something that really affects them. Which is why when some of these lawmakers, these governors in these border states start talking about sending people up to Greenwich, Connecticut, or to Delaware, or to Maryland, or to the San Francisco Bay Area, or Scarsdale, New York, well, then it starts to resonate a little bit more because then it's actually happening in their jurisdictions. Right now they're able to say, well, it's, Texas's problem. But the problem is Texas can't handle this. Again, economically and socially, you have seen the challenges that all this border unrest has caused. So, Florida's Governor Ron DeSantis, who's talked about as possibly a candidate for president in 2024, also doing his part to say, you know what, we're not going to allow this. He said, quote, what we're doing in Florida is saying we're not going to let the recklessness of those policies impact our state. If Biden is dumping people, we now have money where we can reroute them to sanctuary states like Delaware. We're going to do that, DeSantis said, to make sure that we're keeping people safe here. So this is expected to be kind of an explosive issue as we go into next month. Let me repeat that Title 42, which has been in place since March 2020, by the Trump administration. It will be repealed. I believe the date is May 23rd. So everybody's gearing up for some big challenges. Look, it's possible. It's possible that maybe the Biden administration will say, that's not a good idea. Maybe we should put it back in place. I mean, you do have a lot of Democrats, including Maggie Hassan out of New Hampshire, John Tester out of Montana, Joe Manchin out of West Virginia, along with Kristen Sinema, who of course is Arizona, saying, this isn't really going to work, and we can't actually have an end to Title 42. So the drama lives on. Lots of news, speaking of drama, going on over at Twitter. Elon Musk, of course, as we reported the other day, has taken a 9.2% stake in the company, and that has a lot of employees, it's kind of nervous, kind of mad, kind of upset, threatening to quit. There's kind of a mutiny, if you would, going on over there at Twitter because Elon Musk is now joining the board. He's been asked to join the board, and people are upset about that. They shouldn't be. They really shouldn't be, but nonetheless, this is such the world in which we live. And so, according to a Washington Post article, the CEO of Twitter had a kind of, ask me anything conversation, or is going to have an ask me anything conversation with Elon Musk. He had one himself. Elon Musk is apparently going to address employees, to address some of their concerns. But, fundamentally, I think the problem here is ideology, right? For some reason, the left has thought it was absolutely okay to trample over any viewpoint that they didn't agree with. And that's what's been permitted on Twitter, that's been permitted within the culture, and it's gotten so out of hand that Elon Musk is coming along and saying, okay, this isn't working. It's not working for society. We can't even have humor anymore. Don't forget Babylon Bee, which is a fantastic site. I encourage you to go and look at it. Started by a great group of guys. Seth Dillon is running the company, the CEO there. And Elon Musk apparently loves the content, just loves the content. And Babylon Bee got locked out of their account recently because they made some quips about, things that you're not allowed to talk about these days, apparently, as far as Twitter was concerned. And so now things are going to have to change. Things will start to change. And I think that's a super, super big positive. And, all these sort of, babies that are worried about having some more diversity in opinion, that's fine. Maybe they do need to find other jobs. Maybe Twitter isn't right for them. But bottom line here, I'd like to see algorithms improved so that you do have more tolerance and that you do have more diversity, and you don't have effectively these kind of, ganging up on one opinion or one particular person where they try and create a cancel type environment. So I do believe good things are in store for Twitter as a stock, as a company, and also for our society. So watch for that anyway. We'll see what Elon has to say. I want to also get to what's happening there at the UN, because I'll tell you, when Russia loses the UN, what does that tell you? But before we do, a quick word from one of our wonderful sponsors. We're looking at so much inflation right now. I've been pounding the table, telling you about this now for well over a year. It's not getting any better. In fact, it was already bad enough, and now we've got the situation with Ukraine making things increasingly worse. So inflation is here to stay for the foreseeable future. I don't think there's any way you're going to be able to get around that. And as such, you've got to think about how you're protecting yourself, your investments, and your portfolio. And the good news is you have options. Gold prices, they are rising because investors are turning to the safety of gold. Gold provides that hedge against inflation, protects against a weakening dollar. You've heard me tell you that before. Well, Legacy Precious Metals is the company I trust for investing in gold and silver. You need an investment that will protect your wealth, protect your retirement. So call these guys today. Charles runs the company. He's wonderful. Tell them I sent you, because I promise you they'll take really good care of you. 1-866-589-0560, 1-866-589-0560, or you can download their free investing guide. Go to legacypminvestments.com today. Again, legacypminvestments.com. All right, let's turn to Russia. Like I said, when you lose the UN, things are pretty bad. Well, things are pretty bad for Russia right now, and I think that the Kremlin is starting, hopefully, to figure that out. That said, if you listen to the interview I did yesterday with someone who has been gathering intelligence on some of the war crimes that have been committed there in Ukraine, David Falk. I encourage you to go listen to that. It was Thursday's show from Preventive Diplomacy. One of the points he makes is that the resolve, if you would, of Vladimir Putin is quite strong, and he doesn't anticipate that changing anytime soon. As such, this is a conflict that's going to go on and on and on for quite some time. Did see a little bit of progress in terms of the international community recognizing the threat, the problem that Russia is. There was a UN vote, of course, just this week, in which they decided 93 to 24 to kick Russia off the Human Rights Council, which is, obviously something that should happen given what has been reported thus far. And I say reported because Russia does deny this, but look, here's the reality. We have seen the satellite images. I have sources on the ground that have told me what has happened. This is really ugly. It's really bad. There are violations of human rights, and to think that Russia sits on the Human Rights Council, well, really is pretty laughable. So they're getting booted off of that, but the 23 nations that stuck up for Russia, this is interesting. You had your usual suspects, places like China, North Korea, Cuba, Syria, Iran, Belarus. I mean, these are the countries, right, that Putin has on speed dial, so to speak. China's upsetting to me because I look at China as maybe being helpful, or I'd like to think they could be helpful from a diplomatic standpoint, but don't forget, they got their own problems, right? They get the Uyghurs that they clearly have violated human rights on, so China's got its issues. Meanwhile, there were roughly, I believe about 58 countries that actually abstained from the vote altogether, and these are kind of, client states of Russia. They're fearful about ruffling feathers, if you would, with Russia, because maybe they still are doing some business dealings, which brings me to the need to stop doing those business dealings. Really, we put sanctions in place, additional sanctions this week, which is a good thing. But what I'm troubled by is that you don't have more people engaging in these sanctions, specifically the EU, which has this threat on their doorstep. And yet the EU, while it said it was going to phase out coal buying this year, has still not committed to cutting off the nat gas supply. I get it. They need Russia's nat gas, and they can't completely pull the cord on coal because they also need Russia's coal. But what kind of world are we living in when Russia can commit those kind of atrocities to your neighbor, and you stand there and still conduct business with them? And we need to get more creative about this. The Wall Street Journal's Holman Jenkins had an interesting suggestion, and one that I would recommend as well. It's one in which they could at least put payments for Russian energy into an escrow account until Vladimir Putin ends his war. And so that might be at least a little something, right? You put those into an escrow account, so you're still paying for this, but and you're still getting your nat gas shipments. Although ultimately, I think the bottom line here is we need to focus more on domestic security, right? We need to be secure in our own energy supply. Europe needs to be secure in its energy supply. And we need to be able to treat countries like this, with leaders like this doing such things as he is, as the lepers and pariahs that they are. And if you're not able to cut off the financial arrangement, then that makes it a whole lot harder. Sanctions can work, but they actually have to be followed. And too often, throughout history, we see that there's too many workarounds, too many ways to get around this. And so if you don't actually put the economic pressure on, you're not going to get the results you want. Okay, quick reminder, everybody, I am on Locals. Please join me over there on the Locals platform. Go to trishregan.locals.com. You can go to my website as well, trishintel.com, to get more from me, news and information on the website, and a little bit more personal interaction. You can actually message me there directly on the Locals site, trishregan.locals.com, and I will see you back here on Monday.